Welcome to Tailoring Talk. I'm Roberto Revilla, bespoke tailor and owner of Roberto Revilla London Suit, Shirt and Shoemakers. I weave superpowers into every stitch. Join me as we meet self-starters and creators diving into their journeys and uncovering valuable lessons to help you be the best you can be. Hit subscribe, leave me a rating, and let's tailor greatness together. Today's guest is the founder and editor of the Goodmaker Tales website, covering all aspects of sustainable and ethical fashion and home from a British perspective. Following a globe-trotting career in real estate, including work on the zero-carbon city of Masdar in Abu Dhabi, she's always had a passion for sustainability, which recently extended into fashion. Here to share her story and give us some practical tips on how we can all become more sustainable in our lives, Tailoring Talkers, please welcome Julie Moorhouse to the show. Julie, how are you?
Thank you very much. I'm good, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Very happy indeed.
I really wish I was on the other side of the phone line right now, because you're calling in from Madrid, which is my other home, our other home. I miss it so much. We hope to be back over at some point in the next few weeks. We're just trying to find a dog sitter at the moment.
Bring the dog. They love dogs here.
Yeah, well, you know, passports, all that nonsense.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need a break from them, to be quite honest, as much as I love them. You have somehow brought us some very Madrid-like weather today. So I'm sitting here wishing I was outside. It's 20 degrees, which it hasn't been for flipping ages. How's Madrid today?
It's actually really hot. They told me this morning it was going to reach 30 today. So I'm actually hoping it doesn't, because it gets a bit hot when you have to go and pick children up.
Yeah, I can imagine. And speaking of children, school run, etc., let's get into it. So sustainability. So it's really interesting because I make clothes for a lot of people in real estate, and it's something that is and has been heavily talked about in the real estate industry for a number of years now. People moving offices are very proudly boasting the eco credentials and the carbon zero credentials of the buildings they're moving into, and you know, to be as positive as I can about all of it, although, you know, knocking things down and rebuilding them again is arguably not that sustainable.
Not very sustainable, no.
But people are at least building better, or they seem to be in a lot of instances, and I think obviously we do have to applaud that. So if we go back a little bit before we get into the fashion side of things and just sort of take you back to your real estate days.
Yeah.
You've worked all over the world on some amazing projects.
Well,
Right, why hesitate? What?
No, I was going to say, well, I have worked in the Middle East and Spain and the UK. Haven't worked anywhere else.
But that's, to me, that's globetrotting.
Yes, I have.
I don't get out that much.
Yeah, no, I have. I don't travel very much these days, so it's like a distant memory.
Yeah, when did you come out of real estate? Was that when you started a family, or was it a decision that you kind of came to because you fell out of love with it? Just take me kind of back there and give us your origin story, as it were. Yeah,
no, well, I love real estate, and I always will. But no, I got made redundant when I was 6 months pregnant, and in the middle of COVID. And I just thought, I'm not going to start looking for another job. At the moment in Spain, they work much longer hours as well. So with children, I didn't want to have to work long hours, so I wanted to work for myself. And I just fancied a change, really. I didn't know where it was going to take me, but I've always been, as you mentioned, I've always been interested in sustainability. I started learning more and more about sustainable fashion. I was quite shocked, especially because I myself had been there sitting in meetings talking about sustainable buildings, all the while, you know, buying loads of new clothes I didn't need, and wondering why I couldn't fit them all in my wardrobe. So, you know, I was classic. And I wasn't one of these kind of young Instagram girls that goes out and buys a dress and wears it once. I've still got clothes that I bought 20 years ago, or more. But I really have always loved buying clothes, and now I just generally don't. I try not to. Or if I do, I buy from a sustainable brand or I buy secondhand. So yeah, if I would never want to preach to people, because I definitely was one of those people that was really kind of like buying without really thinking about it, thinking that I was sustainable, but hadn't really considered the sustainable aspects of fashion. And a lot of people just haven't. And it's not because they don't care, they just haven't thought about it.
Yeah. And I think also a lot of people, they don't or aren't aware of what actually happens to their clothes afterwards. Because we've gone beyond landfill because it's all on the surface now. So I was reading a news article recently about the clothes melting in the Chilean desert.
Yeah.
Which is where a lot of our clothes are ending up. Obviously, you've also got places in the Far East as well, where there are clothes mountains developing. But to be able to now see the visual of that from outer space is quite incredible, and I don't mean that in a good way at all. For anyone that's watching or listening, I really don't. But it is also extremely frightening.
Yeah.
And you almost wonder how the hell we can come back from this, because it just seems to have got out of control.
Yeah, I mean, it totally has, and just kind of going back to my own story, I used to take bags of clothes to the charity shops. But when you think about it, the charity shops can only sell so many clothes. If everybody else is taking bags and bags of their clothes as well, there's just not that much demand. And luckily, there is more demand now. People are starting to get more into secondhand fashion. But historically, I just think they just had too much stuff. So they were getting stuff sent. They were sending stuff away. It's ending up in Africa, ending up in, like you say, in the Middle East, in deserts in Chile, which I was reading last week that some of it has now disappeared from view on the satellite images. And someone had commented that it's because a lot of it has been burnt, which is even more shocking and horrific. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But there's a massive problem. And then I read something else the other day that we've got 6 times as many clothes in the world that we'll ever need, like ever. There's no new clothes are really needed. So we've just got so many clothes, and it's just what to do with them. So actually something that is really great, and even when I started only a couple of years ago writing about sustainable fashion, it was still seemed to be a really good thing to recycle plastic bottles into clothes. And in that short space of time, it's been recognised that that's not a great thing. It's not great to recycle plastic bottles because they can be recycled back into plastic bottles. And once you recycle them into clothes, they can't really be recycled again. So actually what we need to do is deal with exactly what you're talking about, all the textile waste, and recycle that back into clothes. And there's so much new technology coming out. It's so great to read about it. All these amazing people that are doing all this work about how to recycle clothes, chemical recycling. And there's a great company called Circ, and they can recycle a polycotton blend now. They can extract the polyester and they can extract the cellulose from the cotton and remake it into a type of very pure viscose, which is purer than normal viscose. So it's just, these great minds and what they're doing. It's just fantastic. It's great that we've got people like that on the planet who are helping with this massive problem.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the Instagram influencer or TikTok influencer thing, which is a big issue. I mean, we see it in London, and you see so many influencers on the doorsteps of... I was saying to my wife the other day, if we could afford one of those townhouses, I think I would just be like Victor Meldrew. I'd be permanently peeved. People standing on my doorstep, posing and taking pictures and stuff. It would just really irritate the bloody hell out of me.
Oh, yeah.
But, they're buying things from places like Boohoo and Primark and whatever, wearing them once for the photo opportunity or to create an Instagram reel or a TikTok video, and then they get thrown away. They don't wear them again. Some of these influencers have got huge followings, and I don't want to kind of crap on all influencers, because there are some, and this is where I think things need to pivot in social media, where when you've got influencers that have got huge followings, they've actually got the power to either continue contributing to being part of this problem, or being part of the solution and helping to start reversing it. So I need to find her Instagram handle actually, because I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's an influencer I follow. Her videos are so funny, and she's so genuine. Her following grown so rapidly over the last few months. Ellie, oh God, what is it? But the thing that she's doing is that when you watch her videos, she's very often wearing the same pieces in a lot of videos. So it's like, I'm wearing my mango schmango top again, blah, blah, blah. And then a lot of the other things that we're seeing from her that she's wearing that are new, she's promoting sites, so you get sites where you can actually rent dresses.
Yeah.
And rent outfits, or she's proudly showing off things that she bought secondhand, or things that she's just borrowed and that will get returned, and then somebody else will use them. So she's using, and I don't know if she's aware of what she's doing, but if it's intentional, it's brilliant, because she's using her growing influence to actually do something about this problem rather than being a contributor.
Yeah, no, good for her, definitely. That's it. It's just, isn't that crazy that people don't want to wear the same thing twice? I mean, that is just crazy. Most of the clothes that I live in are the ones that I just. I'm sure we've all got our favourite pair of jeans that we wear like all the time. I can't imagine only wearing things once. But, and I've read somewhere as well, and I try and live by this, that if you want to buy something, you should really think about how many times you're going to wear it, how useful it will be, and you should buy something that you're going to wear as much as possible. And also you should sleep on things that you want to buy as well. In fact, I've had things that I've thought about for a year before I bought them. And then I'm like, no, I really do want this, so I'm going to buy it. But yeah, we should buy things that we're going to wear again and again and again. Until they wear out, and then we should get them fixed. Should come to you and get them fixed.
Well, that's what happens back in the day, right? So if we go back to, I grew up in the sort of 80s, 90s, so, my mum would always fix things rather than, she couldn't afford to buy me anything new anyway, because I've been 6 foot since I was about 12 years old. And, but, my trousers always, had a patch on them somewhere. Socks, if they got holes in them, they would always get darned and repaired. And, I think if we go back, there was that sort of attitude back then, because pre-1970, people had things made, seamstresses were very common, or, just your mum being able to sew things and put things together and make clothes was very common, right? A lot of the magazines that our parents might have grown up with had sort of knitting patterns and things like that. You don't see that so much these days. No. And I remember when I was younger and I first got into the tailoring industry, a lot of clients would talk about their parents, their fathers, and how, my father, we grew up, we weren't that well off, but everybody had a tailor. And then we get into the 70s, and I think that's where the beginning of this sustainability problem started, with the advent of mass manufacturing and artificial fibers and sportswear and so on. And then all of a sudden it just exploded. I think, from our point of view, I think we're starting to see people become a bit more aware of what they're doing. And so we're hearing people talk more about buying less, but buying better quality so it lasts. And, we'll always share stories. I had a client recently who changed shape again. But he brought in a bunch of trousers that I'd made for him about 20 years ago when I first started.
Cool.
And he was so proud as well. And he said, look, they're still going. And I said to him, this is sustainability in a nutshell, because we can retailer all of this for you. And then it saves you buying as many new things that you thought you might have to come in and buy.
And actually, they'll be just exactly how he wants them, and they'll be really different because they'll be his unique piece rather than something that everybody's got or something that other people have got. I've bought a few dresses secondhand from brands that I know the size that will fit me, but actually they've not quite been right, or they've been too long, or needed taking in, one dress, I had it taken up too much and it was so short that you could see my bum at the back. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wear this. So I went and bought this kind of like bit of fabric at the bottom. Well, in fact, my boyfriend went and bought it for me. And it's kind of like a bit frilly. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with that? But they sewed it on the bottom and it looks really, really cool. And like, I've got this unique dress now that's way better than it was. It doesn't show my bum anymore. And I was thinking, nobody else has got this dress because it's completely unique. And other dresses that I've had taken up and then changed and taken in, and now they're unique to me. And actually, if I was any good with a sewing machine, I could do it myself. My mum's got a sewing machine and she doesn't use it anymore, so I should try and figure out how to work it, do some sewing.
You've interviewed some quite incredible people in the field of sustainability when it comes to fabric, fashion, and so on. Is there anyone in the kind of manufacturing field, production of fabric field that's really stood out to you?
Not so much in the well, yes, it is manufacturing. I was thinking about Nudie Jeans. So they offer a free repair service for their jeans. And I think they I can't remember the number now, but they'd repaired something like 5,000 pairs of jeans in the last year. So, and they were very much about, repairing your jeans and then reusing them. I've got like, I was talking about my favorite pair of jeans that I wear all the time. They're starting to get a hole in the knee. And I was like, oh no, I need to I need to basically repair them. And I was thinking, how can I do this so it looks cool rather than just like looks crap with a rubbish patch on it. But yeah, it's so cool that they do that, and they use old denim from old jeans that can't be repaired as patches. And they say they need a lot of material for patching, but that makes those jeans completely unique. And I love that. I just think that's amazing. And they do it in their shops as well. And if you can't find a shop, you can send it in. You can send your pieces in and get them repaired. And they even do like a patch kit. So you can send off with their kit and repair it yourself at home. So maybe I'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we do the same as well. It's like jeans I always talk about with a lot of fondness because, I talk to clients and I explain that, the dye on jeans is made up of indigo, which is layered, and jeans kind of, as they age, that those layers kind of chip and fade. The conversation starts when people say, oh, I've heard that you should never wash your jeans. Is that a thing? And I'm like, well, you can wash your jeans if you want, but the problem is every time you wash them, you strip a layer of that indigo off. And what you really want to do is you want to wear your jeans, not launder them or launder them infrequently, because as you wear them, the things that you do in them start to chip off bits of that indigo, the indigo layers, and then that's how your jeans start to fade and start to, get little patches and things from the things that you do. And it tells a story. So I've still got the jeans that I was wearing pretty much all through our house build, and I remember exactly what bit of the scaffolding I was on when I was doing whatever it was that I was doing. When you talk to people about that, about the history, the story that their clothes can write, the tales that their clothes can write as they age, using terms like, your jackets, linen jackets are great, the fabric lasts for a very long time.
Yeah.
But it wears in a certain way that, a good linen jacket like the one I'm wearing now just becomes like an old friend. And talking in those terms gets people sort of more connected with their clothes. Trying to help people to make that connection with their favourite pieces of clothing then makes them think, actually, how can I keep this going longer? Or at the very least, ask the question to people like us.
Yeah, well, actually, going back to what you said about to what I was saying about Nudie Jeans, is they were talking about raw denim, which I didn't really know very much about, and exactly that the way that you wear your jeans determines the different types of creases and everything in them. And I think it's on their website. You can actually see there's like an example of the same pair of jeans worn by someone sitting at a desk, worn by someone who's really active, and worn by someone who, I don't know, is probably doing the house up like you. and all those three pairs of jeans are completely different, even though they all started the same. So yeah, you're right. Clothes have a character, don't they? And mine all have a character with a hole in the knee and hole in the toes and clothes that we love to wear.
But where do you really start with that? Because you must get people asking you this question, right? Like, how can I go
Yeah,
more sustainable? There's obviously the obvious stuff that we're already touched on, but where would you kind of start with people? Because also you kind of want to do it in a way that they sort of take things on board and don't feel like they're not made to feel guilty for sort of their behavior to this date, because we've all been part of the problem, right?
totally. Yeah, no, and sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, I remember when I was a lot younger and I first discovered brands like Uniqlo, and, I wasn't earning that much money, but suddenly I could actually buy a whole load of stuff for not much money. And
Yeah.
it only lasted about a year, but then it was like, so what? You throw it away and then you just get more stuff.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, I'm horrified at myself and my own behaviour for that, because that clothing has just contributed to part of this whole global crisis that we're now potentially facing.
Yeah. No, well, I feel the same about my own behaviour, and horrified at myself. But one thing I would say is that it doesn't matter what's in your wardrobe. What matters is that you use it well. So I've got clothes in my wardrobe that I bought previously, not knowing anything about sustainable fashion, from brands that I now know aren't great. But the most important thing is that I wear them and that I use them. So the most sustainable clothes you own, that you can get, are the clothes you already own. And that's the most important message, really, is that you don't need to go and buy a whole lot of new clothes to be sustainable. So the most sustainable clothes are already in your wardrobe. The least sustainable thing you can do is go and throw them all away and go and buy a whole lot of new clothes, even if it is new clothes from sustainable fashion brands, because pre-existing clothes are the most sustainable. Having said that, of course, if you've got clothes that are shedding a load of microplastics in the washing machine every time, that's slightly less sustainable. So you can do things like buy a guppy bag, which you put your synthetic clothes in to keep in microplastics. So that's the first thing. And just going to your point about clothes being really cheap, that is a problem, because we're all kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? We're all too used to seeing clothes being really cheap, and so therefore we don't value them. I found, or my auntie actually recently showed me a letter which was from my granny's boyfriend before she met my granddad. So this is from like the 1920s or something, and he put on the letter, he said, "Oh, I've not seen you wearing that new dress that you bought," because it was such a big deal that she bought this new dress, because she probably got one or two a year. And so he knew about this new dress that she'd got because it was a thing, And can you imagine now someone writing about the new dress that they bought, because people buy so many new clothes? And so that was really interesting, because, of course, the prices were such that you couldn't afford to buy a new dress every week or every day or whatever people are doing now. And so that's the first thing, is value the clothes that you already have, really value them. If you don't like them, think about what you can do with them. Either you can change them to adapt to yourself, go to a tailor's, or give them to somebody else who might like them. I did go through a phase of giving a lot of my clothes to my sister when I was basically buying too many clothes and not wearing them all, and said to her, "Do you fancy this? Do you fancy this?" Bought it, don't really wear it. And she'd be like, "Yeah, that's great." So we kind of were sharing clothes quite a lot. And look at buying secondhand clothes, look at rental, and then look at some of the amazing sustainable fashion brands out there. So there's a whole kind of I keep forgetting what word I'm looking for, but there's a whole kind of idea that sustainable fashion is really, really expensive. Well, it's not if you're keeping your existing clothes and reusing them and using them better. It's not if you're buying secondhand. It's not if you're mending the clothes that you've already got and making your clothes last for longer. Also, washing them less and washing them according to their care labels so that they don't wear out. But then when you do buy new clothes, hopefully you've got a bit more of a budget to buy good quality clothes, like you were saying, buy good quality. But not all sustainable fashion brands are really, really expensive. And I always talk about Yes Friends, who are a brand based in Bristol, and they set out to show that a sustainable T-shirt could be made through fair trade with organic cotton, and they started off selling them for £7.99, and now I think they sell them for £12. So that that's very affordable. Maybe it's not £2 or something, but actually, if you're paying £2 for a T-shirt, that's because somebody else is paying the price for your T-shirt somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So somebody is working for nothing, or slave labour pretty much, to make your T-shirt, and that is how brands can afford to give you a T-shirt that cheap. Give you basically a T-shirt that cheaply, because somebody down the line is paying the price. So when you pick up something and say, I can't believe how cheap it is, it's almost too good to be true. It is too good to be true. Somebody somewhere is paying the price. So those are some of the things that you can do. And the other thing that has kind of become more into my consciousness recently is the toxins in our clothes. You know, we all just think that our governments are doing everything that they can to protect us. And the sad fact is they're not. Dyes in clothes, stain resistance particularly is forever chemicals. Waterproofing particularly is forever chemicals. I think stain resistance is as well. These are really carcinogenic chemicals that are affecting us. They're affecting our fertility. Fertility rates are going down, well, probably because of all the chemicals in our environment that we don't realise we're exposed to. We all used to use, Scotch Guard to waterproof all of our clothes, our shoes. I remember buying a sofa, not the one I have now, but I remember buying a sofa in the past and paying extra to have it stain proofed. Probably was absolutely full of chemicals. You're sitting there relaxing on your nice, comfortable sofa, and actually you're breathing in all these toxic chemicals. So I just think that's something we need to be a lot more conscious of. So you can look for labels like Oecotex and BlueSign that show that it's safe, that it's within a level of acceptable chemical use, because there's always going to be some level of chemical use, unfortunately, particularly for children and babies' clothes. That's really, really useful to look out for, and great that we're seeing more and more. I'm seeing that label more and more on clothing, on bedding, as well, even on mattresses. I have an article about non-toxic mattresses because you don't think about all the places where chemicals get into everything around us. So yes, that's something I'm becoming more and more conscious about.
It's on the clothing side of things, I'm talking to people about really trying to, before they hit the shops, try and work out what you're trying to achieve, what you really want to achieve, and if you need to, because just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that we should. So when I'm not wearing, so I'm very, very careful over my wardrobe. It is very carefully curated. A lot of people assume that I've got rails and rails of my own clothes, suits and jackets and hundreds of shirts, and I'm the kind of male Imelda Marcos when it comes to my shoes. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So the point is, I don't have this massive wardrobe that people think that I have. I'm very, very careful with what I buy. So when I'm, for example, this jacket that I'm wearing is part of a suit. And so I always, when I'm buying suits, when I'm making suits for myself rather, I look at the colours, fabrics very, very carefully to see where I can get the most versatility from them.
Yeah.
And I talk about this a lot on my YouTube shorts and Instagram reels and things. So for example, this suit, I can wear it as I am today with a navy t-shirt or any t-shirt really, and jeans. I can put the whole suit together. I use the trousers on their own with other jackets. I try to work out
versatile.
Just the most multiples of something that I can get out of one thing.
Amazing.
You try to do that with our clients as well. Obviously, it benefits us as a brand from a sales point of view if we're able to sell more. But that's not really what we're about. We try to come at things from a sort of different angle. And when it comes to fashion, because that's another thing as well. I mean, fashion itself is a beast. It's the second most polluting industry.
Yeah, industry in the world. Yeah.
But, fashion by its very definition thrives on change and trying to encourage people to forget about everything they invested the previous season and get a whole load of new stuff and keep following and chasing. And, we really try to talk to clients about how it's important for them to really consider what their personal brand, their personal style is, and then trying to just tread within those lines as much as possible. So, something I always say is you can be kind of influenced by fashion, but you should never be dictated by it.
Yeah.
Because if you're someone who's dictated by fashion over your lifetime, you will spend an inordinate amount of money chasing, and you'll have ended up buying a ridiculous amount of clothes. Probably one person would have ended up buying enough clothes to clothe a small town or village or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Versatility I think is key, and also just identifying what your own kind of style and so on's about. So there we go. That was a very long-winded way of saying I've actually got a very small wardrobe in comparison to what people think it is. But and it's other things as well, Julie. Like I didn't realize, and now we're starting to talk to people about things like not having zippers on their trousers, and having button flies instead. Because if you need to take that garment and break it down, a zipper, you can't do anything.
Oh yes, that's what you mean. Yeah. Buttons, buttons.
You can take them off and break the rest of the garment down.
Yeah.
When you're looking at some of the technologies that you were talking about, where people are taking fabrics and able to sort of start to break them back down to then make them back up into something else.
There's quite a few jeans companies, actually. Tommy Hilfiger's one of them. There's several that part of this jeans redesign project, which was set up by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And one of the things they do is not put rivets in their jeans because, again, it makes it less recyclable. And there's loads of things they do. And they actually have a label saying jeans redesign project. So you can find out which jeans, when you go out shopping for jeans, have been part of this project. And they're just doing like small things like that, but lots of things like that to make things much more recyclable. Type of thread that they use as well. And Nudie Jeans were talking about that as well, because they use the entirety of the cloth. So they're not kind of wasting parts at the edges. So there's, like you say, there's lots of things like that people can do when they're designing their clothes. But just going back to your point about your wardrobe being small, my wardrobe is still too big. There's so many things I want to get rid of, but actually I almost have a conscience about getting rid of stuff. That I don't want to get rid of stuff because there's some things that I just don't know how to get rid of. So I'm doing an experiment at the moment, and I probably will regret saying this, but I'm doing an experiment with some underwear that is supposedly biodegradable. So it's outside in a plant pot, and I'm waiting to see if it biodegrades.
What? So once you finish with it, it's kind of looking a bit worn and stuff, and you don't want to use those knickers or whatever they are. Don't
want to throw them in the bin. I don't want to throw them in the bin. Yes, composting them. I don't want to throw them in the bin. I don't really want to use them as a cleaning cloth. It'd be embarrassing if people came round. So they're in a plant pot on the terrace, and they've only been there a short while. I haven't told anybody else this, so now everyone will know. I'm waiting to see if they biodegrade, if I can compost my knickers.
Have you got any idea how long it takes?
I think it's meant to take, I don't know if I'm supposed to water them. That's the only thing. It might be a bit dry. So I think it should take a few months. I'm not really sure.
We might have to reconvene after the summer, Julie.
I was thinking I should have taken a picture beforehand and stuck it on Instagram, but I didn't. I just buried them. I was getting a bit excited.
Well, when Carolina and I are out in Madrid, don't be surprised if I look you up and say, "Hey, Julie, this isn't about getting together for dinner or anything. I just want to come look at your plant pot, see if the knickers have biodegraded." Yeah, composted.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, so there are some certain amounts of clothes that you just can't. You don't know what to do with. I mean, I do have an article about how to donate and recycle your underwear. Unfortunately, a lot of the companies are in the UK, so I need to bring bags of clothes back to the UK and put them through the appropriate recycling initiatives. And there are some amazing recycling initiatives now, actually, and some great underwear companies that will take underwear from any company, because that's the other thing. You don't want to just, you're going to have underwear from different places that you need to recycle. So rather than just sticking it in a closed recycling bin, which unfortunately seems to have disappeared in Madrid now as well, stick them in your plant pot. No, but like I say, there are companies that will do it.
On that note, I wanted to ask you. Sorry to interrupt. I literally just hit, and also I'm conscious of time for you as well. What time's the school run or whatever over there?
Don't worry, I don't have to go today. I've got my other half is going. He's going today.
Brilliant.
Day off.
So yeah, the one thing I notice when we go to Madrid, I see trends starting there before they do in London.
Do you? Oh, right.
Yeah. So, as a recent example, bell bottoms are back, right?
That's
Although
true,
now
actually.
everything's starting to go tapered again. But bell bottoms, when we were there, not last Christmas, the Christmas before, I started to see it there, and it wasn't until summer of 2020, I think it would be 2022. It wasn't until about the summer of 2022 that I started to see jeans that girls were wearing start to get a little bit wider legged. You know, the boyfriend
Right.
jean is very prevalent over here.
Yeah.
So every single time I go to Madrid, I see what is going to happen in London about 6 months
Wow, that's
before,
so
which
interesting.
in this day and age you wouldn't think would be the case, because obviously with social media, the internet and everything, we can see what the whole rest of the world is doing. But I don't know why that is. Do you ever notice? Do you pay attention? Do you keep tabs on what's going on over here compared to over there? Do you think there's more a focus on people really hitting trends? Because you've got brands like Zara. So my wife used to work in family office for Inditex, for the owner,
Yeah.
and she said to me that she went to the Inditex factory that manufactures for Zara and their other brands, and she said if something hits the catwalk, they, at the time, this was about 10, 12 years ago, at the time, they could go from concept to manufacturer to shop shelf in a week or
Wow.
inside
Yeah.
2 weeks. It must be faster now because this was a while ago.
Yeah.
So what was my question? I asked very, very long-winded
Did
questions.
do I notice the difference in the trends between London
Yeah.
and Spain? I don't actually, because I probably I've not been back to London that many times. But when I have been, I'm normally running around and don't have time to. Well, I don't think to look at that. But you're actually right. I mean, the Spanish are very kind of fashionable, and they do like to wear. I guess they would like to wear looser clothing, probably because of the heat. But yeah, the bell bottoms are a big thing over here, and very bright and colourful clothes. As you can imagine, I'm here in a black t-shirt. I'm not really. I have been told that I dress too English, which is hilarious, and I'm like, well, I don't really care. I'm English. Yeah, but they dress with a lot more brightly coloured, big necklaces. Desigual, which I'm not a big fan of, but Desigual obviously is big over here. But yeah, definitely much more expression through clothes, I think. Yeah, we dress a lot more simply, probably in the UK. Simple colours, and yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That's what I would say the difference is.
I guess the kind of last thing I wanted to talk about, whilst I've got the pleasure of your company, was moving down to our feet, because footwear is another thing that's been quite top of mind for me. We launched custom footwear about a year ago, and I didn't realise at the time. It was just during another podcast interview where I was explaining to my guest what we were about to launch, and she found it absolutely fascinating. That we don't actually stock any shoes at all. We just have different sizes and lasts. So we size our client, and then we have a 3D design tool that we use to actually then virtualize their shoe so they can choose all the elements of it. And then we make the shoe, so we're not producing any more than our customers need us to.
That's amazing.
Like a traditional shoe shop, they've got a storeroom, or worse if it's a big brand, they've got warehouses full of boxes and boxes of shoes. And if they don't sell them, we know what happens, right? And it's even worse with some of the really big luxury brands, like the one that begins with B and ends with Y, as an example.
It was caught burning its clothes, yeah.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Like handbags and stuff as well. They'll either burn them, incinerate them, or they slash them so that they then can't be sold at a cheaper price to maintain the perceived value of the brand.
Value,
sort of thing.
yeah.
It's absolutely nuts.
Outrageous, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
No.
So anyway, so shoes, because obviously veganism in footwear is coming. So we are now able to produce a vegan trainer. We've done 3 or 4 pairs now, and also trying to make our footwear, whether it's a trainer or whether it's a shoe, in a way where when it starts to show signs of age, like the sole wears out or whatever, we can get the shoe back and we can actually take it apart and actually put it back together again.
Oh,
And
that's
just replace the
amazing.
sections that actually need doing. I mean, you've been able to do that for a long time with traditional English brands like Crockett and Jones, Churches, etc. Goodyear welted formal shoes. You've always been able to recraft. So we're just following that trend, but we're trying to extend it to, casual footwear like trainers and things like that, because those are generally throwaway items. But again, through all of the amazing people that you've met, interviewed for the site and so on, what are some of the brands that you've come across that are making really, really big waves in that area of sustainability in footwear?
Footwear. So there's people like Good Guys Don't Wear Leather, who are a Paris-based brand. Nay Vegan, NAE is No Animal Exploitation, who are a Portuguese-based brand. Will's Vegan are a UK brand. And there's quite a few. I've got an article about vegan footwear, which gets a lot of visitors. And what's really great is that traditionally you thought of vegan shoes as being like a plastic PU, plastic leather, which would rub your feet and get really sweaty and just be horrible. And now there's these really cool plant-based leathers, particularly apple skin leather, pineapple leather. Apple skin leather, for example, I think must be more commercially, because originally they were obviously very expensive, but I think apple skin leather must be more commercially viable because quite a few brands now are selling apple skin leather shoes and bags as well. And so you don't have these issues of it being plastic. It's actually a natural, going back to the point about biodegradable, I'll have to test some of those out as well. Plant pots.
Your windowsill will be really interesting at some point, won't it? Because you'll have a trainer sticking out of one, a handbag sticking out of another, knickers in another one.
Knickers were well and truly buried down.
Yeah. But that's fascinating, because you think about it, it kind of makes sense that if we're able to utilize, take apple skin leather as an example, which is something, I'll be honest, I'd not heard of until you just mentioned it. But then it takes me to, well, where would they get apple skin from? It comes from apples. There's a whole industry around cider, apple juice and so on, where
there's loads of waste
that fruit. So the amount of waste that's produced in the skin, because that's not what we drink. But then, creating these connections between these different manufacturing industries where we can utilize each other's, one man's or one company's waste is another's handbag range or shoe range or, t-shirt range or whatever. It's fascinating.
Yeah, pineapple. I think it's pineapple leaves that they use as well to make this one that's called Oecotex. There's ones made from coffee. There's ones made from wine waste. There's also Stella McCartney has an agreement with another company who are called the product is called mycelium, which is made from mushroom roots. Wow. The kind of fungi roots, and they make that into leather. But it's just so cool. And I certainly now try not to buy leather shoes at all. I mean, occasionally I have to buy leather shoes for my children, but I try not to. Or if I do, I buy them secondhand, because I've started learning a lot more about leather production and I don't like it. Whereas historically, I always bought leather shoes. I wouldn't buy them if they weren't leather. So it's great that there's so many great alternatives. But just going back to that point about, sometimes you just have to, and I just think you can't beat yourself up. You can't do everything all the time. And I've come to realize that from, there's times you just need to buy something. I have a classic example at Christmas. I was in John Lewis. I needed to buy some tights, and I picked up this packet of tights and it said wool tights. And I turned it over and just to find out more information. And it said 60-something% viscose, 20-something% acrylic, and 7% wool. I was just like, that is such greenwashing. They're not really wool tights at all. They've got a little bit of wool in them and they're mainly viscose. But I bought them because I needed some tights. And that's it. Sometimes you just can't always, I didn't have time to go home, research sustainable tights, wait for them to come. Sometimes you just have to be practical, and we all are doing our best, and sustainability is a journey, and we all do the best that we can. And we shouldn't beat ourselves up if we do occasionally buy something from a fast fashion brand, or we buy a product or a material that we wouldn't ideally like to buy that material. But stuff is becoming more and more and more available, and it is becoming easier to access sustainable fashion, but it's not always. We have to do the best that we can in everything. in all aspects of our life, being as sustainable as we can. Sometimes we, do stuff that we know isn't as sustainable as we'd like it to be. And also, just going back to another point that you made earlier about business, and that is that companies have to make money. And you were saying about, you don't want to sell more products to your customers, but at the same time you do, because you want to make money. And that's how all big business operates. And so it's a really difficult conundrum that to make money, companies have to sell products. But that's a big form of making money, is to sell products, and therefore it's not sustainable. So therefore it is difficult. And there's this huge kind of like capitalism. It's all about, producing and expanding and growing and showing growth to your shareholders. And that's very difficult if you're then trying to limit production and manufacturing and be more sustainable. So it's a huge conundrum. I don't think any but one person has got the answer. But there's some amazing companies out there doing amazing things and taking amazing steps, like, producing apple skin leather and other things like that. Manufacturing with less waste, manufacturing with less chemicals. And we're seeing more and more of it, and it's getting more and more publicity, which is great. So we all just need to do the bit what we can.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of it's not funny, but you know what I mean. It's it's interesting that a lot of the brands that you mentioned in the sphere of sustainability are smaller independent brands.
Yeah,
you didn't really. I think the biggest name you mentioned was Tommy Hilfiger. On the jeans side of things. But, all of these innovative concepts like apple skin leather, et cetera, you mentioned smaller brands, and that's the thing, right? When you're a big behemoth of a company, switching to electronics, for example, so, there's a whole thing about, like, you change your phone every single year, which I've been guilty of. But, now I'm holding on to them longer because technology has just reached a point where, you buy a phone today, it's probably good for at least 5, 6, 7 years. So why do you need to have the latest thing all the time, right? So, but then you look at a company like Apple, and they do have shareholders and stockholders, et cetera, et cetera. They are, I think, the most valuable company in the world, or the second most valuable company in the world. If they suddenly climb back down on, I know they talk about how 60%, I think, of a MacBook is made from recycled materials, etc. But then there's a lot of stories and articles that dig into the truth of that and really question it. How sustainable can you really be when you've got to answer to profit hungry stakeholders, etc. Whereas when you then flip that to smaller brands, independent brands, so take even us as an example, our company, it's myself, it's my wife, it's our workroom team. We're not answerable to anybody else. So, we're able to make decisions like when we send shirts out to clients now, we don't use plastic packaging anymore. We ran out of plastic, the shirt sleeves. We ran out of those about a year ago. The ones that we have for people that do want their shirts wrapped, we make sure that they're recyclable. But 90% of our shirts are sent out wrapped in recyclable tissue paper, which itself has been made from it's all recycled itself. We just don't send out in plastic where we can help it. So, we're able to make those decisions without fear of, having a bunch of shareholders or, at some directors meeting or something, people coming down on us like a ton of bricks because, it's like, so what, we can do whatever we want. And I think that's the point, right? It's if you're quite serious about making a difference, I think it's really important what you said, that people shouldn't beat themselves up. I think if we're at least thinking and we're considering all of this, it's a step in the right direction. Yeah. But then also picking who you buy from and purchase from can make a big difference. And over time, I think that's what sends a message out to the bigger companies. And eventually they'll be forced to make a change. Yeah.
Talking about big companies, H&M have done a lot, and they do really well on transparency. And they certainly are doing a lot in the sustainability sphere. You can't criticize them for that, but you can criticize them because at the end of the day, they are producing more and more products all the time, and they are promoting overconsumption. But again, that is their business model. So it's very difficult. But as fast fashion brands go, they certainly do a lot. If you look at the Fashion Transparency Index, they score consistently at the top. So they're being very transparent. They're doing as much. Well, they're not doing as much as they can, but they're doing a lot compared to other brands, is what I would say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Brilliant. Julie, thank you so much. That's I feel like we could literally go on forever and ever.
No, I do. I'd literally sit here and chat all day.
I am really curious about your composting pot now. So when we've sorted out our dog sitting arrangements and so on, and because we do need to get out to Madrid, actually, we've got family we really need to visit. I will let you know, and if you're up for it, then we'll say hi.
Come and look at my plant pot.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Julie. Thank you all so much for joining Julie and I. Follow the show on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast for the latest episode updates, highlights and news. The podcast is also on YouTube at Roberto Rivilla London. And if you're watching there, thank you very much. And if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, do me a favour, go and subscribe and show it some love, because it is starting to grow, but I want it to grow more. You can email me at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Hit subscribe, give the show a rating and a review, and click the share button in your player to send this episode to someone you know who needs to hear what Julie shared with us today. If you love Tailoring Talk and you want to support the show, hit the support the show link in the show notes. Have a great week. Be good to each other, and I'll catch you on the next one.